Hi guys, it's Kelly and I'm back with another video for Create a Smile. Today we're going to be using the crocuses set and the served up. This one is a newer one. It's got these adorable little hippos in it. I really love the one with the cart, but I wanted to use it a little differently. So I'm using the Simon Says Stamp Intense Black ink. It's Copic safe and just a regular old post-it note. And I'm using the post-it note to mask off the awning part of the cart. And because the cart curves down just a little bit and I was too lazy to like cut mask that actually fit it, I'm going to just touch up those little edges with a baby wipe, and then I'm going to go ahead and stamp that down. So I thought it would look, like an open cart, or even if like you trimmed along that curved edge, it could look like a wheelbarrow. So there's like a lot of options here. And what are you going to fill your cart with? Flowers, of course, because it's my card and flowers go on everything. So I'm just stamping those down. I will tell you, here's an error that I did make. So I masked stamped, and I only had to mask just a couple of times to get what I wanted. But this flower I'm stamping right here, the cart curves down. You just heard me say that, but I wasn't thinking about it at the time. So when I removed the mask, I realized that like half my flower is missing because it is not sticking out of the cart. So I'm going to put my mask back in place and stamp the flower a second time. That does mean that the line of the cart is going right through my flower, but I knew that some of my colors were going to be dark enough. I wasn't really going to have to worry about it. So I didn't fix it. But if you're doing this, you want to use the cart in a similar way, or you're trying to recreate this card, make sure that you cut at least curve that part of the mask so you don't make the same mistake that I did. So moving on to the Copic coloring, hippos are gray. So I pulled out my cool grays, and I wanted my light source to be coming from the top right. So all of my shadows are going to be to the bottom left. That means his face, his belly, under his hat, his legs, especially his back leg, that's all going to be in shadow. So that's how I'm coloring them. And sometimes for me, it's like hard to not leave some light on that shadowed side. But I promise you, you want it to be dark if it's facing away from your light source, the sun, whatever. In my case, it's the sun because he's clearly outside. I don't know many people who'd be rocking flower carts in the middle of their living room. But anyway, make sure that you commit to that shadow, because otherwise your card is going to look strange. There's so many times where I don't do it, I don't commit to it, and then I always end up going back and adding it because it just looks odd. So doing what I always do, lightest to darkest, darkest to lightest, and I'm adding like the darkest color. I just added very little bits, and where it really would be the heaviest shaded area. His cheeks kind of sticking out a little bit. He's got those full, adorable little chubby cheekers, so that it's kind of like sticking out from his hat, so there's a little bit of a highlight on that. And then his arm is away from his body, so again, a little bit of a highlight on that. And then mostly just his back side. Not just his cute little rump, but even like the back of his head and his legs. Those would all be in light, so the highlight should be there. Here I picked out some reds to do a lot of my coloring. I did his hat band, and this is, again, whatever your favorite color combination is going to be, this red one happens to be my favorite. It's R32, R35, R29, and R59. And I also knew it was going to be dark enough to cover up my little boo-boo over there. And then there'll be another little detail that we add later that helps kind of blend that out, so I didn't have to start all over again, because I'm lazy and I don't want to do it. So I made the center of my flower the darkest, and I did go over it twice, just like I normally do for these first two, but I have to tell you, for the rest of them, I did not. I only went over them one time because the area was so small. I was starting to get a little bit of bleeding. I wasn't really interested in that. So normally when I shade things, I shade them from left to right. So I put my highlight in the center. I started doing it. You can see that I started doing it. And then I realized, no, your light source is in the back. You have to make the left side darker than the right. So everybody makes mistakes, guys, even me. And, I don't think it's terribly noticeable. I don't think that it's going to be a huge deal. So I'm not worried about it. And that means when you make your cards and you make those mistakes, you shouldn't worry about it either, because it's okay. It's still going to be pretty at the end. I'm doing the tire red. Again, the shading is going to be on the left-hand side, highlight on the right-hand side. Here I remembered. Here I remembered what my game plan was. And then I'm just, doing everything that I normally do, blending it back out with my lightest color. And I had a hard time figuring out like placement of my flowers. So I colored the whole thing in with the lightest. I didn't really go over this one. I did my first one, and I'm only showing you two. I'll show you the colors I used for the other ones, but not the way that I colored them because it's kind of boring. So I'm using light hand, flicking motion from the center out, and then just a little bit of the dark, and then going back in and doing it a second time. For you, you're going to have to decide if your hand is light enough to be able to pack all that color into such a small image. Mine wasn't. I got a little heavy-handed, and I had some bleeding. So we're going back to the grays now. The reason I'm showing them to you again is because I added some darker ones because we're going to do this tire. Tires should be black, but we're going to give the appearance of black with just our grays. So again, everything's going to be darker on the left-hand side because our light source is on the right. So I'm leaving just that little bit of a highlight, and then I'm going in half moons around the tire, and each time I'm not completely covering up the color before it. So you can see we're starting to get, just from the little coloring that we have done, we're starting to get that look of the light source being on the right-hand side. So I picked out some blues and decided that I was going to do blue and purple and red. When you're picking your color combinations, anything that is across from each other or next to each other is going to be your best bet. So these ones, I picked the ones that were next to each other. I was going to do the cart white. So I'm using just a little bit of the C1. I'm not going all the way to the edge because when you're coloring a white object, you should leave some parts of it white. Doing my shading with my C1 and my C3. And I think maybe I might add a little bit of C5. I'm not sure. We'll see here in just one second. But this is, something, if it's going to be darker, see, I did go C5 just a little bit though. It's going to be darker in one area, for your shading, even though it's a white object, it's okay to add a little bit more gray. By the time you get done with all of your coloring, it will still look white as long as you haven't added too much color all over the whole image and you've left yourself some pure white. So just finishing off the little handle and stand there, I decided to make his hat purple. Working in odd numbers is more pleasing to the eye. So I have 3 blue things, I have 5 red things, I have 3 purple things. That's how I ended up making his, or her, depending upon how you want to look at it, hat purple. Plus purple and red are just pretty together. So I shaded that one as well, where it would be tipped on his head, how it would be lighter toward the light source, darker up front, where the top portion of the hat would cast a little bit of the shadow onto the brim. And then I realized that I hadn't really given him too much color, so I wanted to go back in, give him some pink cheeks, and get that ear that was just white. So I just went over with some R20 right over his little chubby cheekers and made them pink. Then I'm going to start working on the ground portion of it. Green, this green combination just happens to be my favorite, and they needed something to ground them. I felt like they were outside. I didn't want to commit to doing like a whole big scene. This stamp is large enough, carries the card, carries itself. So I just wanted to give it a little something to stand on so he wasn't just like floating in midair. Doing my shading more forward to the left because that's where the shadows would be cast, but there would also be a shadow underneath that cart. Well, I'm not making that particular shadow as dark as his shadow or the one for the tire or the kickstand. I did add a little bit of extra shading in there just because it would make sense to do so. There wouldn't be as much light underneath his cart. And we're just going to go back through and blend those out. I didn't even bother trying to do like the blades of grass. I just stuck really simple blending, and I was happy with the way that it looked. in the end. So, I mean, again, this is all personal preference. Maybe you want it to be more involved. Maybe you want the blades of grass. Then commit to that. Do that. That's totally fine. It'll be adorable. I'm sure of it. I'm using my souffle pen, which is an embossing pen, to put in little yellow dots of color in the flower centers. And then my white gel pen, I'm just adding little vertical stripes to the cart and his hat band. Just something that's going to be a little interesting. I'm also going to use that white gel pen to add some white dots to my flowers. And this serves two purposes for me. It makes the flower more interesting. I like white dots, but it also will help me cover up that line in that flower that I misstamped. So you won't see it as much because your eye will be drawn to the details. And, you know, if I hadn't showed you a video, I'm sure nobody would probably even notice. I'm outlining all of it in a B, what is it, a triple zero? Yeah, B000, because I knew I wanted to put in some distress ink to really reinforce that light source idea. So I just outlined everything, and then I apologize. I was like so in the zone. I completely forgot I was zoomed in for the Copic coloring, and I did not zoom back out when I started doing my distress inking. So this is actually it's going to be Salty Ocean. Right now, it's just whatever's left over on my foam. So it was super light, and then I went back in and picked up some more Salty Ocean just for the more left-hand side. And I'm not being very heavy-handed about it, but it's enough that it really highlights the right-hand side and really makes those highlights that we left in our Copic coloring stand out. So now I've zoomed out, and then I started doing my outlining. So I was like, I don't know, a hot mess or something. I'm going to go ahead and stamp my sentiment. This is Black Simon Says Stamp ink. And if you were not aware, Create a Smile is now available at Simon Says Stamp, which is super exciting for us. I'm using a Spectrum Sparkle marker to add some glitters to the flowers, and then that is the entire card. So thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. I will catch you in the next video. Bye.